I don't know what's happened here. And all I can say to you is
On October 28, 2013, paramedics rushed to a home in Sutton, South London. Inside, they found a 6-year-old girl lying dead on her bedroom floor. Her father said she'd fallen from a chair, but the injuries told a different story. What investigators uncovered wasn't just a murder. It was a system that handed a child back to the man who would kill her, despite every warning sign screaming danger. Her name was Ellie Butler. She was 6 years old, bright, bubbly, always smiling. For most of her life, she'd lived with her maternal grandparents, Neil and Linda Gray. They'd raised her since she was just 7 weeks old. She called their house home. She thrived there. But Ellie hadn't always been with them. In February 2007, when Ellie was only 6 weeks old, she was rushed to the hospital with catastrophic head injuries, subdural bleeding, brain swelling, retinal hemorrhages, the kind of injuries doctors see in car crashes. She'd been alone with her father, Ben Butler, at the time. A family court judge reviewed the evidence and concluded that Butler had caused those injuries. Ellie was placed with her grandparents. Butler was convicted of grievous bodily harm and sent to prison. For 5 years, Ellie stayed safe. But in 2010, Butler's conviction was overturned on appeal. New medical evidence raised doubts about whether the injuries were inflicted or accidental. Then in July 2012, a high court judge named Mary Hogg went further. She didn't just overturn the conviction, she exonerated Butler completely, declared him a victim of injustice. And she ordered Ellie to be returned to her parents. The grandparents begged the court to reconsider. The local police objected. Social workers raised concerns. Butler had a violent criminal history, armed robbery, assault on previous partners, witness intimidation. But the judge's decision stood. Before the custody order was finalized, Ellie's grandfather, Neil Gray, made a desperate plea. He allegedly told the judge directly, "You will have blood on your hands." In November 2012, Ellie was sent back to live with her father and mother, Jenny Gray. She'd spent 5 years in a stable, loving home. Now she was being returned to a man she barely knew. 11 months later, she would be dead. The months after Ellie's return were anything but peaceful. Teachers at her school, Avenue Primary Academy, noticed things. Ellie started missing classes. A lot. Her parents would send notes, upset stomach, sore throat, unwell over the weekend. But when Ellie did come to school, she sometimes had bruises. In June 2013, she showed up with injuries to her face and forehead. Her father said she tripped on the stairs. The school offered help. The parents refused. They became angry, defensive. They mentioned their lawyer when staff asked too many questions. Behind closed doors, things were worse. Ben Butler sent his partner, Jenny Gray, hundreds of text messages throughout 2013. Vile, abusive messages. He called her disgusting, told her he hated her and Ellie, threatened violence. He was a man with a volcanic temper, and Ellie was a lively, mischievous 6-year-old who didn't always do what she was told. Around October 1st, 2013, Butler inflicted a serious injury on Ellie, a fractured shoulder blade. That kind of fracture requires severe force. Ellie would have been in acute pain, but her parents never took her to a doctor. They kept her home from school. They lied about why she was absent. For nearly 4 weeks, Ellie lived with untreated injuries, hidden from anyone who might help. Then came Tuesday, October 28, 2013. That morning, Jenny Gray left for work in the city of London. Butler stayed home with Ellie and her younger sibling. Butler was feeling unwell. He was trying to catch up on chores, and at some point that morning, he lost his temper. What happened next wasn't an accident. He attacked Ellie with brutal force. He either slammed her head against a hard surface or struck her with a blunt object. The impact shattered her skull. Catastrophic fractures, bleeding on the brain. Ellie died quickly. But Butler didn't call for help. Instead, he called Jenny, told her whatever lie would bring her home urgently. Then he started staging the scene. He arranged Ellie's body on the bedroom floor, placed a pink child's stool beside her, as if she'd fallen. He called a friend, sent casual texts trying to establish a normal timeline. He even walked the dog, chatted with neighbors, smiled. Meanwhile, Ellie lay dead in her bedroom. When Jenny arrived home, she found her daughter's body. But instead of immediately calling emergency services, she helped Butler cover it up. They washed Jenny's work blouse. It had Ellie's blood on the collar from when she'd hugged the body. They tore up Jenny's diary and threw it in the bin. They rehearsed their story. They even involved Ellie's younger sibling. They told the child to go into the bedroom and find Ellie. The child would later be heard on the 999 call, saying, "Ellie won't wake up." Nearly 2 hours after Ellie died, Butler finally dialed 999. On the call, both parents sounded panicked, desperate, screaming. Butler said Ellie had fallen, that she wasn't breathing. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They found Ellie on her back next to the overturned stool, exactly as staged. She was pronounced dead at the scene. At first glance, it looked like a tragic accident. But the post-mortem examination told a very different story. The pathologist who examined Ellie's body was Professor Anthony Risden. He'd seen thousands of child death cases. But Ellie's injuries stopped him cold. Her skull had multiple significant fractures, the kind of damage you see in high-speed car crashes. The bleeding inside her brain was massive. Professor Risden would later testify, "I have never come across a short-distance fall that results in a similar injury. This wasn't a fall from a chair. This was violent, deliberate trauma." And there was something else. When they examined her bones, they found a fractured shoulder blade. It was about 4 weeks old, unhealed, untreated. That injury alone would have caused Ellie severe, constant pain. Yet her parents had never sought medical help. Police arrested both Ben Butler and Jenny Gray. Butler was released on bail the next day. The investigation began. Detectives started pulling records, phone data, text messages, medical files, school attendance logs. What they found painted a disturbing picture. Butler claimed he was a loving father, wrongly accused in the past, finally reunited with his daughter. But investigators found hundreds of text messages he'd sent to Jenny throughout 2013. Messages filled with rage and hatred. "I had enough of your weight and looks," he wrote. "I hate you both. You will end up hurt." He didn't sound like a devoted father. He sounded like a man barely containing violence. Then there was the timeline. Butler and Jenny claimed Ellie had just fallen moments before the 999 call. They said they were cutting cake for the kids when it happened. But the blood evidence didn't match. Jenny's work blouse had Ellie's blood on the collar, exactly where it would be if she'd hugged Ellie's body. That blouse had been put in the washing machine. Why wash it if the fall just happened? And there was the 2-hour gap. Phone records showed Butler had called Jenny much earlier in the day. He'd walked the dog, made calls, sent texts. If Ellie had just fallen, why the delay? Forensic analysts examined the scene. The position of the stool, the way the body was arranged, it all looked staged. School records revealed another contradiction. Butler and Jenny claimed that they were attentive parents, that Ellie was healthy and happy. But the school told a different story. Ellie had been absent repeatedly in the final months of her life. The parents gave vague excuses: stomachache, sore throat, unwell. When she did attend, teachers saw bruises, an injury to her eye, marks on her face. In June 2013, Ellie had been taken to the GP with facial bruising and grazing. Butler said she tripped on the stairs. The doctor accepted the explanation. But now, looking back, it was part of a pattern. Detectives also uncovered Butler's criminal past. He wasn't just a man with one overturned conviction. He had a history of violence. Armed robbery, assaulting previous partners, witness intimidation. He'd been described in probation reports as a medium-risk offender with a propensity for rage. This was the man a judge had declared safe. As the investigation deepened, prosecutors prepared for trial. They had a problem, though. Proving murder meant proving Butler had inflicted the injuries intentionally. Butler's defense would argue it was an accident, a tragic fall. So the prosecution turned to cutting-edge technology. They used CT scans and X-ray data from Ellie's remains to create 3D printed replicas of her skull. 2 exact models showing every fracture, every point of impact. It was the first time 3D printed evidence had been used in a British murder trial. When Professor Risden examined those models, he could demonstrate exactly how the injuries were inflicted, the angle, the force, the impossibility of a fall causing such damage. The trial began in April 2016 at the Old Bailey. Ben Butler was charged with murder and child cruelty. Jenny Gray was charged with child cruelty and perverting the course of justice. The prosecution laid out the case piece by piece. The text messages, the cover-up, the 2-hour delay, the staged scene, the 3D skull models were presented to the jury. Butler's defense argued that Ellie might have died jumping off her bed, imitating a character from the children's show, Peppa Pig. They called it a tragic accident. But the medical evidence was overwhelming. Neighbors testified that Butler had seemed calm, even cheerful, on the morning of Ellie's death. He'd walk the dog, chatted normally. That wasn't the behavior of a father who just watched his daughter die in a freak accident. Jenny Gray took the stand. She claimed she didn't know Ellie was already dead when she arrived home, that she believed Butler's story about a fall, that she only lied to protect him because she was scared. But prosecutors tore her testimony apart. She'd washed evidence, staged the scene, delayed the 999 call, subjected Ellie's dead body to unnecessary CPR to maintain the lie. After weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated. On June 20th, 2016, they returned their verdict. Ben Butler, guilty of murder, guilty of child cruelty. Jenny Gray, guilty of child cruelty, guilty of perverting the course of justice. The next day, Justice Wilkie delivered the sentences. He didn't hold back. He described Ben Butler as self-absorbed, ill-tempered, violent, and domineering. A man who saw his children as trophies, not human beings. Butler hadn't lost control in a moment of stress, the judge said. This was entirely consistent with how he treated Ellie for 11 months. Far from collapsing in distress and remorse, as any decent person would, the judge said, your default position of selfish callousness came into play. Butler was sentenced to life in prison, minimum term 23 years. Jenny Gray received 42 months, 18 months for child cruelty, 24 months for perverting the course of justice. As the sentence was read, Butler shouted from the dock, "I'll fight for the rest of my life. Unbelievable." Jenny wept. Outside the courtroom, Ellie's grandfather, Neil Gray, spoke to the press. His voice was heavy with grief and anger. He'd spent £70,000 trying to stop Ellie from being returned to Butler. He'd warned the judge. He'd begged the system to listen. No one had. Neil's wife, Linda, Ellie's grandmother, had died just 2 months earlier, on the very first day of the trial. She'd been battling cancer, struggling to stay alive long enough to see justice for Ellie. She didn't make it. Jenny Gray didn't even know her mother had died until after her own conviction. Her family chose not to tell her. Neil would later say he had disowned his daughter. He couldn't forgive her for what she'd done, or failed to do. A serious case review was published the same day as the sentencing. It found that multiple agencies had failed Ellie. But the most damning criticism was reserved for the judge who'd ordered her return. Justice Mary Hogg's decision to exonerate Butler hadn't just cleared his name. It had stripped away every safeguard designed to protect Ellie. She'd ordered a letter sent to all agencies declaring Butler innocent. She'd replaced experienced social workers with a private firm that had limited access to case files. As one official put it, the decision handed all the power to the parents. Professionals who saw warning signs felt powerless to act. The hostile behavior from Butler and Jenny, the school absences, the bruises, all of it was dismissed or explained away. Because a judge had said Butler was safe. Justice Hogg retired 1 week before the trial began. She refused to cooperate with the serious case review, citing constitutional reasons. Today, Ben Butler remains in prison. He's maintained his innocence and reportedly continues to pursue appeals. Jenny Gray was released after serving her sentence. Her whereabouts are unknown. Ellie's younger sibling, who was forced to participate in the cover-up, is still living with the trauma. And Neil Gray is left with memories of the granddaughter he raised, loved, and couldn't save. Ellie Butler should still be alive. She should be 20 years old now, starting a life, chasing dreams. Instead, she's another name on a list of children failed by the very systems meant to protect them. Her grandfather's warning echoes, "You will have blood on your hands." He was right. What do you think could have been done differently? Could this tragedy have been prevented? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please consider subscribing. These cases deserve to be remembered. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story moved you, please consider subscribing. These cases deserve to be remembered.